Hello everyone, my name is Mike Geig, and welcome to another live training session from Unity. How's everyone doing today? I'm not going to wait for you to respond because there's about a 20-second delay, but I'm going to assume you're all doing pretty good. So, it's been a little while. I'm back doing some live stuff. Today we are doing Merry Fragmas Part 1. This is a three-part, hopefully, series where we make a first-person shooter and we do networking and effects and animation, stuff like that. So, just let me know in chat if the audio is not good. This is the first time I've done this in a while, and I had to rebuild my computer, so I've never really, fully tested it. So, yeah, good. Sounds like it's looking good. So, we're going to be breaking this up into three parts. Today, we are going to be building the first-person shooter, and we're going to look at some of the caveats to making a first-person shooter and some of the techniques to that. And we'll also be setting up all of our assets and things like that. Tomorrow, we are going to begin integrating our networking. We're going to use Photon. More specifically, we're going to be using the Photon Unity network. So we will be checking that out and figuring out how we're going to build stuff with that. And then Thursday, I was trying to remember the day. Thursday, we are going to start wrapping up. We're going to make things prettier. We're going to add our effects. We're going to add UI stuff, the ability to have multiple rooms and whatever else we just didn't get to. So Thursday is kind of our spillover day, and hopefully we'll be able to get all of that done in in 3 days. So we'll see how that goes. Like always, before we begin, I just want to mention that if you have any questions, comments, feedback, whatever, feel free to message us on on Twitter. You can follow us at Unity3D, at the Ant Ranch, at Will Goldstone, at Matt Mirrorfish, and at Mike Geig, which is me. So hello. If my audio is sounding better, you can thank Matt Mirrorfish because he's the one. He's an audio expert, and he showed me what's what because I really don't know anything about it. So that's pretty awesome. Also, before we begin, as always, I did draw everyone a picture, so I just wanted to share that with everyone. Merry Fragmas. It's what we were using on Twitter and Facebook, and I figured I'd spread a little holiday cheer. So there you go. All right, before we start building stuff, I do want to show you what we're going to end up with today. So I have built this already, and I'm just going to kind of walk you through what it is we're going to be making. And it's effectively going to be an arena here. We've got our gun, we got some effects, we can aim. A little bit, it's a bit crude, but I'm not an artist, so I'm just using whatever I could find on the asset store and hand making whatever I could. So it's still fairly effective as a 1 hour long first person shooter, so pretty good there. And then we can just shoot bad guys and make them disappear. So that's what we're going to be building. I didn't really make an easy way to leave the game there without force quitting it. So there we go. That's what we're going to be making. Now, the chat here is going pretty fast. It's been a while, so I'm going to need to kind of work out the rest. So I'm going to try to get to the chat as I can, but I may not be as on point as usual. So let's talk about what we need to make this work today. So I'm using entirely, almost entirely all of the assets I'm using from the asset store. There's one thing I made myself, which is just a site reticule, which you can make yourself. It's just literally a circle. So, and I just made that in Photoshop. So, we're also going to notice I have this this pun wizard, Photon Unity Network (PUN). That's because I've imported Photon stuff. We're going to close that. We're going to deal with that tomorrow. So I'm not filling any of it out. I'm not signing up for an account. You can. It's free, but I'm leaving that alone. So let's take a look at exactly what it is we need for the next 3 days here. So let's go ahead and open up the asset store. Now I am streaming and downloading a whole bunch of stuff simultaneously, so hopefully the asset store is responsive. But if it's not, it's because I'm streaming and downloading stuff like crazy. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need is our arena is going to be from the Project Stealth game. So I just did a quick search for Stealth here, and this is the arena we're going to be using. We're going to be making our game out of this here. So you'll need to download that. I didn't provide this ahead of time, the list of assets, because I'm going to be going kind of too fast for you to follow along step by step anyway. So I figured this will be uploaded to YouTube and our website maybe tonight, tomorrow morning, and you can follow along then. But you will need the stealth stuff here. Also, we're going to be using the new sample assets. So the standard assets that are in Unity right now, they're a bit outdated. We have these new ones on the asset store. They're currently in beta, but the first-person controller in there is way better. So that's what we're going to be using. So download these sample assets. And then we are also going to be getting... I forget how to search for it. Here we go. Free Christmas assets, low poly. We're going to be downloading these for the candy cane gun we're going to be using, spreading that Christmas cheer. And then we are going to be using FPS realistic. Now this is the only asset that I'm using that's not free. I'm using this realistic FPS pack. It is $15. However, if you don't want to buy anything, this is purely cosmetic. So these are only for the looks. They don't affect the actual mechanics of the game in any way. So you can do completely what I'm doing without any of this. So buy them if you want some first-person shooter effects or make your own, But if you don't, you just completely ignore them. That's fine. The last thing we need is we need the Photon Unity network. And so there's two flavors. There's a bunch of sample projects and stuff. But there's two flavors here. There's Photon Pun Plus and Photon Unity Network. This one, the Photon Unity Networking here, this is free. And then Photon Pun Plus is not free. It's $95. So the free one gives us access to the Photon Unity Network, basically the Photon Cloud. It works in free, Unity free, for everything except for mobile. The Pro one works in Unity Mobile, free or Pro. So if you're going to be making mobile stuff, you'll probably want to get Photon Plus. If you're not making mobile stuff, Photon free is fine. And what this is going to do is we're going to be using the Photon Cloud, which we're going to be using just all free stuff. And for our purposes, that means we're going to have 20 concurrent users. If I wanted more, I'd have to pay, Photon. Then they have a subscription fee, and all their pricing and everything is just available on their website. But we're going to be doing the free stuff, so we're going to be doing the 20 concurrent users. So we'll just be downloading all that stuff and importing it into our project. One other thing I did here is I created a folder just for stealth, because stealth tends to put all this stuff under the root, and so I just put it under its own stealth folder. And now that I have all of these sample assets downloaded and imported, I'm going to go ahead and organize this a little bit. So I'm going to create a new folder, which I'm going to call Imported Assets. And thank you, Photon. I might end up actually removing Photon for now, but we'll see how much that pops up. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to basically just move everything into this this imported assets folder. The only thing I can't move into the imported assets folder is Photon created a folder called plugins right here where the Photon plugins exist. That has to stay in root. That has to stay under assets. So that's the only folder that we've imported that we're not putting into the imported assets folder. So let's just move the rest of these here. Oh, that's going to just keep popping up, isn't it? I could just show you how to do that right now, but I kind of wanted to save that for tomorrow. Yeah, that's going to get super annoying. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just actually going to remove Photon for now. So Photon, goodbye. I could show you how to do it today, but I kind of want to keep all the networking stuff together. So yeah. So let me just grab these and put them in there. So I'll just re-import the Photon stuff for tomorrow and show you that stuff just to keep all the networking stuff together. So there you go. All right, and that's just going to take a second here. All right, here we go. And so now we just got all those subfolders in there. So the very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start building my arena, right, where everyone's going to do their fighting. And so I'm going to go into the stealth folder, and then I'm going to go into the done folder, which is where all the done stuff is, the stuff that's completed. And then I'm going to go into the done scenes, and I'm going to locate done stealth and just open that up here. I don't need to save the scene I currently have. And so here we go. Here's the stealth game with all of its stealthiness. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as a new scene. Save scene as. I'll create a folder. Scenes. There we go. And I'll just call this main. And there we go. That way we're not messing around with the original stealth files in case we wanted to change that. So the next thing is this is obviously a level built for the stealth game. So there's a lot of scripts in here, there's a lot of models, there's a lot of things that are unique to the stealth game, and I don't want any of those. So I'm actually going to go through the list here, and I'm just going to start removing the stuff that I don't care about. I really only want the level, and it's faster to do it this way than to start with something else, right? So first off, these GUI texts and GUI watermarks, we can get rid of those because we're using 4.6, and so we have all new UI stuff anyway. Next, I'm going to look at this prop lift here, prop lift exit, and I'm just going to go down the row here. Basically, any scripts I can either remove or just disable. I'm just going to actually remove both of those. Goodbye, because I'm not interested in dealing with any of that stuff. And I got to look at some of the child elements too, to look for scripts and to look for anything that's going to protrude or act weird or whatever. So that's gone. Next is the robot guard. I don't need him at all, so I just delete him. Laser fence. Goodbye, laser fence. We don't need any laser fences. Next, we have a switch unit, which is this guy right here, which is used for turning fences on and off. And so I don't need this sphere collider, so goodbye sphere collider, because that was a trigger. I also don't need this script. All right, so we'll remove those things. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit apply, because this is a prefab, and so that's going to save my changes to all of the prefabs, and so those changes were done to all of them. And I'll make sure there's nothing in here. So nope. All right, and so got rid of that. Another laser fence, we'll get rid of that. A game controller, definitely don't need that. This light shines red whenever the player gets an alarm. I don't need that because we don't have a player nor an alarm. We have this main camera. We'll get rid of that. We don't really need that either. And then we need, we got our character Ethan. No character Ethan, goodbye. Sliding door, goodbye sliding door. Lights baked, very important. We do want those. However, we don't need them active in our scenes, so we're just going to go ahead and disable them. We want to keep them in case we ever need to rebake anything, but obviously I don't need them to be activated because everything is already baked. We have a GUI screen fader here, so there we go, don't need that. We have a prop keycard. We could keep that as a power-up or something, but for now, we'll get rid of that. Another switch unit, but we've already updated it, so we don't need to do anything there. Just moving on down. Robot guard, goodbye. Switch unit, you're good. Now this one's a bit tricky. This one caught me off guard when I was doing this before. We have this CCTV camera here, which looks rather innocuous. And actually you open it up, there's an animation on it, whatever. When you come down here further though, the last thing is this cam frustum collision. It actually has a script on it, which we'll remove, and a mesh collider, which actually protrudes out. And for a while there, I was getting pushed around by a camera, which was really weird. So we'll remove that as well. And when I finish that, I will apply those changes to the camera. And again, laser fence, goodbye, laser fence, goodbye. That camera's updated. That's our main light there, we want that. Then we have a robot guard, we can go away, door, goodbye. Our entire environment, we kind of want to keep that one. Our prop switch, good again. Another camera is good. Our exit outer, this one also will mess up some of our physics, so we don't want this. This is simply what opens these doors in the game there. And it has, I don't know what all it has on it, so I'm just going to remove the script and the collider. There we go. And then laser fence, goodbye. Generic sliding door, goodbye. Laser fence, goodbye. And waypoints, don't need those. And so now my scene is clear, and I know that's a lot of stuff, but basically just removed all scripts, all characters, and all colliders that weren't part of the static environment. And then just saved my scene here. I'm going to read through chat real quick here. Is anyone here? Yes, lots of people. Hello. Let's see. King Jake had a birthday. Happy birthday. Let's see. Okay, everything else looks good. All right, cool. So now we have our game here, and our game level anyway, and it's stripped down. We're ready to go. So now that we have this kind of the way we want it to be, it's time to start building our first person stuff. So we can go through and write our own code and create our own character controllers and things like that. But the whole idea here is about using stuff from the asset store, kind of saving ourselves a lot of work. I also want to point out, I meant to mention this at the very beginning, and I completely forgot. The purpose of, these next 3 days is not really a training session. I'm not here to tell you, like, this is how you do this, right? As a matter of fact, I don't even know that this is the way I'm going to be doing it is the best way. I mean, there's so many ways to do stuff, and I'm not an expert on networking, by any means. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you like this is how you do this and this is but the purpose of these next 3 days is to brainstorm and kind of get our creative juices flowing. When I sort of concocted this plan, I knew that we've got winter break coming up for a lot of students or people taking vacation. Global Game Jam is at the end of January. So I really wanted to get some creative ideas out there and just be like, you know what, let's make something fun. Let's not really worry too much about like this is how we do it. This is the most efficient way, and let's just see what we can make in 3 days and just have a good time with it. So I meant to mention that at the beginning. I'm going to mention it now. We're just going to kind of have some fun and sort of be creative. So, and I really just wanted to reuse stuff from the asset store to sort of mishmash it all together. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the first person controller that's part of the sample assets. And so I'm going to go into these imported assets here, and I'm going to look for sample assets, and then I'm interested in characters, first person, prefabs, and here is the first person controller, and I'm just going to go ahead and drop this into the scene here. And he's going to be sort of wedged in the ground. I'll lift him up, go, and just to see what's happening, let's go ahead and hit play and see where we're at. And so we've got the scene here. You'll notice there are some seams visible, right, in between pieces of the mesh, and the sky is kind of light there. And so this really doesn't look great yet, just based on the way the default first-person character is. And so here's a real quick, easy kind of hack, if you will, to make this look a little bit better. So I noticed there was a purplish fog on this level. And so I'm going to go into Edit and then Render Settings. And I'm going to notice the fog color here. And the fog color is 3644-105. 3644-105. And so now I'm going to go back to the first person character. And I'm going to look for the camera underneath of it. And I'm going to change the background color of the camera. So 3644-105. And it had full alpha, so we'll use full alpha here. And the result of doing that now is that when I play, the background fog just sort of fades into the background color. And I don't see the seams, maybe a little bit there. I could use a darker color if I needed to. But the whole thing is a bit more immersive and maybe environmental. And so I kind of like that. All right, so now we have that camera sort of set up there. So we're able to walk around in our scene, and I don't have my audio currently turned on, but you should be hearing footsteps. I don't know if you can or not. Hopefully you can. But at any rate, so you should be hearing footsteps there. And the built-in or the new sample first-person controller is actually pretty cool because it's got sprinting controls, jumping controls, a nice head bob to it. You'll notice the head sort of bobbing there, which is actually going to make the whole thing a bit more realistic, kind of sounds when you jump and land and stuff. So pretty neat. Actually, a lot of the work is done for us in that regard. And if you really wanted to know how to make your own first-person controller, you could simply download this and just sort of play around with it, right? Because there's a lot of really cool stuff in there. All right, so that's great. We've got our character controller, but this isn't a first-person walker. This is a first-person shooter. And so now we need guns. And since we are being festive, the guns in this instance is going to be candy canes because that sounds pretty awesome. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into these Christmas assets. Let me expand that a bit there. Christmas assets, and I'm going to go into the prefabs, and I'm just going to go ahead and bring a candy cane into the scene here. And I'm going to notice a couple things. First is it's super duper dark, right? It's super dark, and also it's really, really big. And so let's handle the first part, the fact that it's super dark. And because it's super dark, the reason it's super dark is because we turned all the lights off. Remember, we have these lights baked, and I could, actually they're only set to baked only, so doesn't really matter there. But there's no real light in this scene. Luckily, when the Unity folks made this game, made this particular level, they baked the lights, but they also baked light probes. And since the light probes are baked, I can go ahead and click on this candy cane and just say, use light probes. Now, if for some reason you don't have light probes or light probes are not working for you, I think you can bake light probes with Unity Pro, but you can use them with free. But if for some reason you can't, you can always just turn the lights back on and just set them back to dynamic and have lighting. But for now, since we have the probes, I'm going to use the probes and I'm going to get better lighting there. So that fixes the lighting issue there. So the next thing I want to look at is I want to deal with the fact that it's just way too big. All right, just a giant candy cane. And so we looked at the prefab candy cane, which actually we didn't really need. It's got a bunch of, well, it actually doesn't have a lot of stuff it doesn't need. I thought that had something, but it didn't. So, but what I want to do is I want to go to the FBX, the actual file itself. Look for the candy cane model. It says at the bottom, candycane.fbx. This is the actual model, the file asset. And I want to modify how it's imported. And I can see that right now it has a scale factor of 1. Which means it's coming in just as large as it was exported from whatever software was used to make it. But that's too big, so I'm going to try 0.1, reducing it. Now that's way too small. Let's do 0.5. I actually don't have a number in mind. I'm just sort of guessing. 0.5 is a bit big too. Let's do 0.4. There we go. Yeah, I like that. 0.4 looks good. Gotta look through chat real quick. Let's see. All right. Cool. All right, so we've got our candy cane here, and so now what I'm going to do is, as you might expect, I want to make the candy cane part of the character controller. I'm just going to click and drag and drop it onto the first-person camera, which is part of the first-person character. The camera now has this gun mounted to it. Now, we're not going to end up leaving it this way, because this has a significant problem that we're going to talk about, but it doesn't hurt just to get sort of set up here. And so now what I want to do is I'm going to start by centering the candy cane on the camera, and I'm going to be getting it into position here. So what I'm going to do is I am simply going to click reset here, boop, and that's going to put the candy cane kind of right here on the camera itself. And so now what I'm going to do is I am going to start rotating it. And it's a little hard to figure out exactly where I want this to be when I'm looking in the scene view. I'm just going to bring my game view over as well, sort of split the two. And so using this, I will be able to see kind of where the candy cane is and how it's lined up for me there. And so also I need to rotate this candy cane, but I don't really know which axes I want to rotate on here. Rotation can get a little weird, objects of objects, you know, and dealing with these Euler angles. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start rotating, figure out where the rotation was and say, oh, that's the rotation I want. And then I'm going to rotate again and say, okay, that's the rotation I want, and so that's the rotation I want. And then just type in here. So I ended up with a rotation in the Y of -90 and the Z of +90. Sure, I could do different rotations depending on which axis I started with. So it could be a little bit different each time. And I can see the gun here is in the center. So if I was making a Christmas tank game, this would be kind of cool, right? I had actually toyed around with different ways of making the shooter. So at first I was like, hey, let's make maybe a tank. And then I thought, maybe not a tank, maybe like a shoulder-mounted rocket launcher kind of deal, you know, have an animation, have it come up over your shoulder. And then I thought, no, we'll just do a traditional shooter. And so, find a distance I like. It's not a science, you know, I'm just sort of toying around with this. I've not recorded any numbers that I actually like. Let's sort of play around with it until, yeah, okay, right there. I like that, that's good. Whatever, ship it, good stuff. Okay, and so I now have my gun here, and my gun, I can see it here in my screen, and if I press play, I have my first-person shooter, more or less. But there's a problem here, and this is what I was talking about previously. The problem is that my camera is seeing this candy cane as a game object in the world with the other objects, and the issue that has is clipping. All right, and so this is a game object just like other game objects, and it does not have a collider, and so it can just go into stuff, and that's kind of a problem. Now, we could put a collider on the gun, and so when we'd come out here, we would just hit the gun and we'd stop. There's a problem with that, though, and the problem with that is that it's bulky and it's kind of unwieldy. And so what would happen is if I was standing like here and I went to turn, I wouldn't be able to turn. I'd get stuck by the environment because there's a collider on it, right? And so actually putting a collider on the gun is probably not the best way to handle this. So what we kind of want to do is we want to compose the scene um, using multiple cameras, which is going to give us some pretty neat effects. One of the questions that came up in the chat here, does the position of the turret impact the gameplay in any way? No. The gun itself is just a visual cue. It doesn't actually do anything. So the gun doesn't actually fire. The gun doesn't, its position is irrelevant. Honestly, the gun doesn't even have to be here. When we finish composing this, I could put the gun like way down in the ground or way up in the sky, and it'll achieve the same effect. The only reason I'm putting it right here is so we get the effect of the light probes and other stuff. Like, for instance, if I run over here to this camera, we'll see the lasers scatter across it. So that's the effect I want. If the gun wasn't here, that wouldn't happen. But the gun is purely a visual cue. It doesn't do anything useful for us other than look like a candy cane gun, right? Okay. So what I'm going to do, so I just brought my game view back over here, is so now I need to fix kind of this issue, this clipping issue. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to compose my scene with two cameras, and I'm going to use layer masking effectively to handle how I render this. All right. And so what I'm going to do is on my first person camera here, I'm actually going to right click it. Right, this is a new thing, by the way, the ability to right-click a game object and have a create empty or create a menu underneath of it. I love this one. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another camera. So that's going to add a camera as a child. And the nice thing about adding a camera as a child is it gives it a zeroed out transform automatically, and so it's just right centered on it. So we have our camera here. And I'm going to rename this gun camera. There we go, gun camera. All right, which is going to be the camera solely responsible for seeing the gun. All right. So we have gun camera here, and for gun camera, I want to do some specific stuff. All right. For instance, what I want to do is I want to make this so it doesn't override my other camera and it can only see certain things. And as a matter of fact, if I go to my game view, I can see the gun camera now. We can tell due to the color of the sky, the gun camera is kind of overwriting my other camera here. So let's fix this real quick. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by going to layer, and I'm going to add a new layer, all right? Because I want a layer specifically for my gun, and I don't really have an adequate layer right now. So I'm going to click add layer, and my layer is going to be gun. It's going to be layer 11, which will actually be important later. So gun, okay. And so I'm just going to, for simplicity's sake, put my gun camera on the gun layer. I don't have to do that. That's actually not an important step, but I like to keep like items together. So the next thing is we don't want to override our previous camera, so our clear flags are going to be depth only. So we're not overriding anything. And next is our culling mask. And so we're going to say, hey, we don't want this camera to draw anything, right? That clears out the mask. And then we want to say this camera can only draw the gun. The only thing this camera sees is the gun. It doesn't see anything else. Now let's go back to our other first-person camera and say, all right, if our new gun camera sees the gun, then this camera doesn't see everything. This camera sees everything but the gun. All right? So this camera no longer can see the gun layer, and the other camera can only see the gun layer. All right? The next thing I want to do is I'm simply going to take my candy cane. I'll make it a child of the gun camera now. Again, I don't have to, but I'm just going to do that for simplicity's sake. All right, just keeping items together. And what I'm going to say is, okay, you are now no longer in the default layer. You are a gun. Okay, so the effect now is if I click on my first-person camera and I look at my preview, my first-person camera sees the entire world except for the gun. My gun camera can only see the gun. And then my gun is on the gun layer. The result of this, we'll go ahead and hit play. And we can see that I no longer clip. My gun actually just stays on top. And this is actually how most first-person shooters handle this. It's just a nice visual effect there. So the gun stays on top, and everything is nice. There's no clipping, and everything looks great. So just a nice little effect there to sort of cheat. You'll learn most video games are actually tricks and cheats and magic tricks and fake outs and things like that. I am going to click on my gun camera real quick. One more thing I forgot. Turn off the audio listener. I do not want the audio listener there. Okay, and so now I have my gun, and my gun is able to see the candy cane, and I fixed my clipping issue there. Um, One of the questions, is the camera drawing order based on the hierarchy position? The answer is no. So if I go to the first person camera, I will see that its depth is -1. So its depth is -1, so it is the lowest order. My gun camera's depth is 0. All right, so first person camera draws first because its depth is -1. Gun camera draws second because its depth is 0. If I had another camera that had a depth of -2, it would draw before the first person camera, or a depth of 1 would draw after gun camera. Okay. Let me just check chat here real quick. All right, cool. Looks like we're kind of caught up there. So now, I'm just going to save my scene. So we have this, it's nice. Oops, didn't mean to pause that. It's nice, but doesn't really do anything. So let's start adding our animations here. So we want our normal traditional first person shooter animations sort of in the scene here. Let's see here. Oh, hey, Matt is messaging me on Skype. He forgot I'm in a live session right now. So, Matt, if you pop in, hello. Okay, so I need to add my animation effects here. And so I'm going to use Unity to do this. I could be bringing these bringing these from a third party, like a Blender or a Maya or something. And as a matter of fact, if I was like in a real production building this, I'd have a lot of custom assets like my models and shooting animations and a lot of that stuff. But I don't have any of that stuff. One of my goals was to use entirely stuff from the asset store. We will be bringing a model in eventually because we need the players to be able to see us to shoot us. But it's all going to be kind of mishmashed or potpourri because I like to just prototype with just what I have. And if I was in production, I'd make a bunch of other crap. But I'm not, so I'm not going to bother. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use Unity's animation tools to make my various animations. And so I'm going to open my animation window. So I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to open Animation, not Animator, and that happens a lot. I want Animation right there. Boop. And I'm just going to go ahead and mount this here. No, I don't want that there. I'm going to put it at the bottom. Put it there. All right, so I have my animation window here, and I'm going to be using this to animate my gun to do. I want I basically want 3 animations. I guess 4. The first animation isn't an animation. It's in fact no animation, where my gun just sits where it is. So I don't need to make that. I already have that. A second animation is going to be an aiming animation, where I aim down sights. The third animation is going to be a sprint animation, where I sort of turn the gun to the side as if I was sprinting, where you can't shoot when you're in that state. And then the fourth one is going to be the actual fire animation. So yeah, so firing the gun itself. Now, it's going to be hard to line up these animations without a couple different visual pieces. So the first thing I want is a sight reticule in the middle of my screen. And so I basically need where I'm aiming. And so normally you might have something like a cone reticule to denote that if you're not aiming, if you're hip firing, it's a little bit inaccurate. But in this game, it's going to be pinpoint accurate just because we're trying to go fast. And so I don't need to build like all the cone code and stuff like that. So we're just going to use the UI to manage this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a canvas to the scene for the new UI here. I'm going to go to Create UI and then Canvas. Here we go. And that's going to add a canvas to my scene. And it's actually really huge. So I'm going to pop into 2D mode and zoom out. And there's the canvas. It's gigantic, right? And so what I'm going to do now, and I'll just move my game view to the side here so we can see what's happening, all right, is I'm going to right click the canvas, go to UI, and go to image. And this is where I'd put my target reticule. However, I don't have one, and I didn't want to make one. And I'm just going to cheat. I'm just going to use this white block, but I'm going to make it size 3 pixels by 3 pixels. There we go. Aiming reticule. It's not super awesome, but you know what? I draw with paint. I'm not about to sit here and pull out all the stops for a sight reticule. So so that gives us our sight reticule here, which is pretty cool. And for now, I'm done with the canvas. So I'll just leave 2D mode and come back to my player. There we go. And so now, just with that one little step, I have a sight reticule here. The next thing is I want some sights on my gun, all right, which is going to help me line up for my aiming. Now this I did make, and so this is, if you're following along, this is something you'll have to make yourself, or not. I mean, it's purely cosmetic. But I'm going to create a new folder, which I'm just going to call textures and materials. There we go. And I'm going to import the image, which is just a Photoshop file there. And this is what it looks like. And I'm not an artist, so I'm going to stress that again. So just this. And I need to set it so alpha is transparency. So there we go. And I want this to look like it's glowing, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a material for this, because this is going to be a 3D object. So I'll create a material, which I'll just call sights. And I will put my sights on there. And the material is actually going to be unlit transparent. And the effect of that is, you can see it right up here, is it's going to glow. And it is going to glow, and it's going to have its transparency. So now what I'm going to do is I need a little quad to put this on, right? I just need the sights plane. And so I'm going to expand first person camera. I'm going to go down to my candy cane here. I'll right click. I will add a 3D object, and I'm going to add a quad. Now we're going to get a bunch of weird messages here about tensors failed and stuff like that. Basically what this means is we have a mesh collider on here. It's many layers down. Physics is like freaking out. And so I'm just going to remove the mesh collider. I don't actually want a collider on it anyway, so removing that is something that I'd have to do regardless. But that fixes that particular error. I'm also going to rename this from quad to sights. There we go. And so now what I'm going to do is, for my materials here, I'm just going to click and drag my sights material on there just like that. Make sure that says unlit transparent. Cool. And so now, where did that quad go? There's the quad. So now I just need to sort of rotate and put this into position here. So I'm just going to go ahead and maybe do this rotation. So we'll do -90. And then we will do this rotation. So we'll do 90. All right. And it's too big, but let me get it into position first. So something like that. And we need to scale this down pretty significantly. And let's just put this on the gun now. Put out. Go. So I'll do something maybe like that. Also worth noting that I'm in 16:10 aspect ratio. I'm not in free aspect, which is helping me line this stuff up. So where I put this on the gun doesn't really matter, because it's just going to affect how I line up my animations. But I'll do something like that. That looks good. Just eyeballing it here. If I was interested in being exact, I would, but this is pretty simple. Okay, and so now that I have the two pieces, I've got my reticule here, and I've got my sights, which are useful for lining my sights up with my reticule. I can begin creating these animations, clear out those errors. All right, and so now, come back to my animation window, and I'm going to select my candy cane, because that's what I want to animate, is the candy cane itself. And I'm going to go ahead and just click the record button. And Unity is going to say, hey, you are making a new animation. And so what do you want to call it? And I'll create a new folder. And that folder will be animations, where I'll put all my animation stuff. And this animation here is going to be gun aim. There we go. Gun aim. And so now I'm in record mode. So everything I touch is going to be recorded. I really want to avoid touching anything yet, right? Because my scrubber's here on the first frame. So anything I move, it'll record that, and I'll lose my initial position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my scrubber down about 5 frames, 6 frames, with the first interval here. And now when I move it, I'll retain my original position in the first frame and my new position. So let's see what we want to do for aiming. So we're going to want to bring that over here. Something like that. We see clipping here. We'll deal with that in a second. And we want to bring it up. And let's make the game view bigger. So what I want to do is I want to get this black reticule line and the white reticule line to just basically line up there. That'll tell me that I'm basically aiming down the center here. So let's, it's just a matter of inching it around there. So there, they basically line up there. I'm good with that. So cool. I like that. That works. I could also bring the Z value in a little bit. Something like that to make the reticule bigger. So there we go. And so now we're aiming, and we do have this clipping here. And the reason we have this clipping here is the gun camera starts with a default near clipping plane of 0.3. We can make that 0.1. and that'll fix that. We also really don't need a far clipping plane of 1,000, so let's give our far clipping plane like 10. That's even a bit much. All right. And so now we can see that when we check out the animation, there we go, and we aim. All right. So that's all there is to the aiming animation. I could get into the curves of this animation, right, to make them like swoop in and stuff like that, but I don't really care. That's good enough for now. So that's my aiming animation. So let's do, we'll create a new clip here. And so now I'm going to go to animations, and now we're going to do gun sprint. Go. Again, I'll enter record mode. I'll move down to the first interval. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to be handling what my gun does when I'm sprinting. And so for this one, we're basically going to be like rotating this way, rotating down like that. No exact science to it. That's way too close. Maybe something like this, maybe less for rotation. We rotate out just a tiny bit. I don't know. I don't want it to take up too much screen space. That's good enough. So there we go. I'm cool with that. That looks good. So we're aiming and we bring the gun down to run. All right, so sweet. Great. So that one works there. Okay. And so now the last animation I need to make is my fire animation. We'll create a new clip. And this one in the animations folder will be gun fire. Oops, there we go. And so this animation, I have to be very careful. I only want rotation data, not position data. Our animations, they deal with absolute values, not delta values. And so if I mess up and I have any positional values in there, our firing animation will look really weird, and it won't work for both our aiming fire and our non-aiming fire. So we have to be careful here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into record mode. Or you know what, I'm not. I'm actually going to not go into record mode. I'm just going to click add curve, transform, rotation. And what I'm interested in is the Z rotation. All right, so let me just go ahead and remove that. And this is going to be a fast shot, right? And so we don't need a start and end frame. We're just going to deal with just a single frame of animation here. And what I'm going to do is I am just going to manage my value here. And let's see, which axis is that? I want to deal with the Z axis. So we're at 90 right now, so we're going to make it something like 90. You know what? There we go. So up is the way I want to go. So let's do something like 93. Okay, so it's just going to kind of dip up 3 degrees, or shoot up 3 degrees. I also, I want them to come out a little bit. So it's currently 270. What does 290 look like? That's way too out. So 273. So a little bit to the right and a little up is what this particular animation is going to do. All right, so it's going to be fast. It's just a single frame of animation, but with the transitions and mechanism, it's going to look perfect. All right, so there we go. Now we have our 3 there. I'm going to go ahead and save my scene. Let me check chat here real quick. Let's see. A lot of questions about Unity 5. It'll be out soon. Eventually, someone. Let's see. Let's see. One of the questions, can you explain in another video how you can play solo and also with Unity networking in the same configuration? Actually, you're going to see that's pretty much exactly what we're going to do. So there's not going to be much of a difference between a networked game and a non-networked game. We can actually even tell Photon to play offline, which means single-player game, right? Yeah. Someone else, by the way, you don't have to manually type in numbers like I'm doing. You can use widgets and rotations and stuff. That's true, but I know that I wanted 3 degrees of rotation, which is why I typed the values in. Also, if we go into record mode and we move the rotation, every once in a while it adds position data, just because it updates both. And if you don't notice that, then you're going to do just what I told you not to do and screw it up. So I wanted to be absolutely certain that I only had rotation in here, so I manually did it. But anyway, cool. So those are my animations. I'm going to leave the animation window now because it scares me and I don't want to break anything. And so let's come back now to our scene view here. And one thing we will notice, in our animations folder, we have the 3 animations we created and the animator controller, which is part of the mechanism here, which was added to the candy cane. I'm going to double click that to open it up, and I can see my states here. So I've got my gun aim, I've got gun sprint, I've got gun fire. However, since this particular animation system here can only play one state at a time, I don't want gunfire to be in here, right? Because I don't want to be firing as opposed to aiming. I want to be firing and aiming, right? And so I'm going to remove this state. We're going to look at a trick that we can have to sort of add animation together. So no gunfire. You might also notice, well, where's my normal state, right? What if I'm not aiming and I'm not sprinting? And so we're going to create that here. But since that's not an animation, it's just how it is normally, it's going to be an empty state. And we're just going to call this empty state here. We'll just say gun normal. There we go. Nothing to it, no motion or anything. It's just our normal state. And I will actually also make that the default. All right. All right. So now we have our states here. And so I'm going to set up our transitions. So I know that from any state, I can aim or sprint. And I could just go from normal to aim or normal to sprint, but there's going to be some difficulties if I want to aim and then go into sprinting and drop the gun, right? Or be sprinting and then go into aiming. So I'm going to use the any state, and I'm just going to transition from any state, right? And then I'm going to transition from aim to normal and sprint to normal. All right, so I got my transitions here. So any state can go to aiming or sprinting, and when you're done aiming or sprinting, you go to normal, right? And so next, what I want to do is I want to specify when I do these transitions, right? And so I'm going to need some parameters. So the first parameter is going to be a Boolean. It's going to be called aim, all right? And while the value is true, I'm aiming, and while it's not, I'm not. I'm going to have another Boolean, and that Boolean is going to be sprint. Same as aim. If it's true, I'm sprinting. If it's not, I'm not. And then for firing, I'm going to need a trigger, all right? Because it's going to happen fast, and so I'm just going to have a trigger called fire here. That means I've fired the gun. Now, I don't have a fire state yet, but I will deal with that in a moment. All right. And then my condition here is going to be from any state to aim is whenever aim is true, and aim goes to normal whenever aim is false. All right. Any state to sprint is going to happen when sprint is true, and then sprint to gun at normal is going to happen when sprint is false. And I just remembered something. I remembered a bug that I fixed previously, and so I actually missed a step. I lied to you. We are going to come back to the animation window, and I am going to create a gun normal animation. Sorry about that. And the reason is we need blends, and to make this look right, and to have blends, we have to have an animation. So I am going to come back to the candy cane here, and I lied to you. So we've got gun aim and gun sprint. A little worrisome. Oh, gunfire's not there because it's not part of the controller. Yeah. So gunfire will be missing right now. Don't worry about that. And I'm going to click create new clip. And this one's just going to be gun normal. And gun normal is going to have a single frame position. And since one of them has rotation, we'll also have rotation. And it's just a single frame there. And we're just going to leave that. We don't have to do anything. Just the animation has to exist. And that's what's important. And you're going to see it's going to fix an issue we have with blends. And so now for my gun normal, just going to have the gun normal animation. And now what you can see is we have blends. Before we didn't. Before we had the message, oh, you can't blend because we don't have any animations. And so what I want to do is I'm going to make my blends, actually going to aim is be fine there. And coming back should not be that slow. We'll just have a nice fast blends there. Pretty quick. All right, and so we just have pretty snappy blends. I don't know that I necessarily need to blend that long. So we just want it to run pretty quickly. There we go. And so now we've got our basic gun motion. The last thing I need is I need the ability to shoot, right? The firing animation. But I can't play a firing animation when I'm playing one of these others. So I'm going to create a new layer, and that's going to manage the actual firing of my gun. So I'll hit the plus icon here. I'm going to create a new layer, and this layer is just going to be called firing, and its weight needs to be 1, so it overrides the properties of the previous layer. All right? So firing now, we have base and then firing. Firing doesn't have any states, and so let's add gunfire. Now, we are not going to constantly be in a state of firing, and so again, I need to create a state. Now this one is going to be empty, and this is just going to be my dummy state. All right? Dummy doesn't do anything. And I'll make that my default. And dummy will go to fire, and fire will come back to dummy. The dummy will go to fire whenever we trigger fire, right? And again, short blend. and then fire will come back whenever exit time. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this as short a blend as possible. And so I'm just going to bring the left blend portion over. I'm going to bring the right blend portion past the left, and Unity will just snap them together there. And then it'll fix it just fine there, and there we go. So we have our blending is fine. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do the same over here. Go. Ooh, did not like that. Oops. Hold down the Alt key. There we go. Line that stuff up. That should be good. There we go. Okay, perfect. There we go. Got those lined up, and they're nice, snappy little animation transitions there. And I'll go ahead and save my scene. So now all of our animation stuff is done, is in place. Is in the way we want it. So now what we need to do is we need to deal with our scripts that are actually going to make this work. And so we're going to have two. The first is part of the character script to begin with, the first person character script, and that's going to tell our animation system when we're sprinting and when we're not, when we're aiming, right? The other one is going to create a new script, and that's going to manage how we shoot, and that's going to manage aiming at enemies, and that's going to manage actually damaging them. And so I'm going to come to the first person character here, and I'm going to look at this first person character script. I'm just going to go ahead and open that. Now this is the script written by the people that made the sample assets, right? And so this is the one I want to modify. And I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in here a little bit. And so I just need to add some stuff to this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new field. And I'm just going to put it at the bottom here of the rest of these. And I'll just do a lot of spacing to separate it. And in keeping with the rest of this, I'm not going to make it public. I'm going to make it serialized field, which is going to keep it private but show it in the editor. And this is going to be the animator anim. And the reason I want it to appear in the editor is I don't want to have to get the component. I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag it on and deal with it that way. Or you know what? Let's not. Actually, let's go ahead and we'll just go ahead and pull this. If we had multiple animators in children objects, it might be difficult to manage, but we don't. So whatever. In the await function, I'll just go ahead and get it so we don't need to click and drag and create a dependency here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say anim equals get component in children. Right, so it's going to look through all the child elements and find the animator, and we'll just go ahead and save it just like that. There we go, and I'll get rid of the serialized field. That way, it's just not cluttering up the editor there. That way, we don't forget to click and drag or anything weird like that. All right, so that we need there, and so now what we're going to do is we are going to look down here, where we are getting our inputs here. And so what we're saying is, hey, are we shifting to sprint, and then determine our speed here. And so what I want to do is right here where we're finding our walk or run, or whether or not we're sprinting, basically, this is where I am going to add my new code. So I also want to know, am I aiming? And so I'm going to say bool aim equals inputs dot get button. All right, so not get button down, but get button. And it'll tell me if I'm holding it. And we're going to look for the fire to axis, which is the right mouse button. All right, I'm not a particularly big fan of using key codes here, left shift key codes, just because, what if you're playing on a device without a shift key or you want to remap it? But that's how it is right now. So they are in beta, so I'm sure that'll get cleaned up eventually. And so now we know whether or not we are sprinting or whether or not we're aiming. And so what we want to do is we want to make it so we can't sprint while we're aiming. And the system right now is such that by default we walk, and if we hold the shift key we run. But we can also change it in the editor so that by default we run, and if we hold shift we walk. So we would need to modify this a little bit if we wanted it to work in all situations. What I'm going to do right now isn't going to work if we run by default, but it's just a matter of maintenance cleaning that up, so I don't really care. So I'm going to say if aim, all right, then walk or run is false, meaning we can't sprint while we're aiming. All right, aiming takes precedence. All right, and so now we have this line here that's just determining whether or not we're walking or running, right? Which I again don't really care about. And so now what I'm going to do is I am going to look. You know what? I'm going to actually put it just right here. I could put it down at the bottom somewhere, whatever, but I'm just going to keep it all sorted together. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to say anim.setBool. All right, so I want to set whether or not we're sprinting. So I'll set bool sprint, and that's going to equal walk or run. Go. And then I'm going to say anim.setBool again. And this one is going to be aim, right, like that. And we're just going to pass in the Boolean for aim. All right, so this is going to allow us to sprint and aim. And so let's take a look at how that works. Go ahead and we'll play our scene. And here we are. If I right click, oh yeah, one other issue. We get this. Problem there is we created our animations, forgot to tell it that we don't want it to loop. No looping. Just click on your animations, uncheck loop time. The animations no longer loop. There we go. Now, I keep doing that. There we go. We get a nice aim, and we sprint, and we get our sprinting animation. All right, perfect. The last thing we want to do is we want to manage shooting, right? And so for this, we're going to create a new script. We're not going to edit the one that exists. So I will create a new folder, right? This one's going to be my scripts folder. And we'll open that up. We'll go create C#, and this one will be player shooting. All right, the player shooting script here. And we're going to go ahead and put this on the gun camera. Right, not the first person camera, not the first person character, but the gun camera. And let's go ahead and open it up. Here we go. So this script is going to be responsible for a few different things. It's going to be responsible for the graphical effects of shooting. It's also going to be responsible for the actual physics of shooting and so on and so forth. And we're going to be managing impacts and things like that. So yeah. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start. All right, so we're going to have just public particle system. So our particle system, and this is going to be our muzzle flash. If you don't have those first-person effects, right, the assets that weren't free, a lot of this stuff will be simplified. You won't be doing a lot of this stuff. I'm also going to do a public animator, which I'm going to call anim, and I'm going to have a public game object, which is going to be impacts prefab. So the effects of what I actually shoot. All right. And then inside start, so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to create and destroy an impact effect every time I fire the gun. All right, because that's wasteful. And especially with networking, we don't want to be wasteful at all. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have just a collection of impacts that I'm going to move them around when I actually shoot. And so I'm going to create here, there's a couple more variables I want. So with that in mind, I'm going to create an array of game objects, which I'm going to call impacts. And these are going to be all of my gun's impacts. Okay? I'm also going to have an integer called current impact, which is going to be set equal to 0. And I'm going to say how many impacts total do I want to have. So I'll say max impacts, which rhymes, yay, and we'll say 5. So 5 impacts total should be fine. You're not going to need more than that. And so what I'm going to do inside start is I'm going to say impacts equals new game object. So we're going to create our array here of size max impacts. So we have our array of those, and I'm just going to iterate through and actually build them. So for int I equals 0, I is less than max impacts I plus plus. Don't actually need the brackets at all. I'm going to say impacts sub I equals cast as a game object, instantiate. So we're just going to make one of these impact prefabs here. So we'll just sort of make that right there. Okay. Oh, there we go. So the game's going to start up. It's going to loop through and just build me 5 of these impacts. All right, and just hold on to that for me. Now I don't need to get component animator because I can click and drag it here. No. If I did it once, I'm just going to do it again here. Removing editor dependencies, going off script. There's no way this can come back to bite me. And so what I'm going to do is get component in children animator again. That way I don't have to click and drag in the scene. We'll just remove the public, so there's no more clutter. That was the wrong one. Animator. There we go. All right, and so now we have our animator component. Now in our update is where we're going to actually manage tracking this stuff. And so what I'm going to say is inside update here, I'm going to say if input.get button down. All right, so if we fired, so we're going to look for fire 1. All right, and, okay, and not input.getKey, all right, key code left shift. Again, I don't really want to use the key codes, but that's how it's currently being done, and I don't have another system in place, so that's the one I'm using. So we're basically saying, hey, if we're not sprinting and we hit the mouse button, we're going to shoot. All right. And so what are we going to do when we shoot? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say muzzle flash dot play. And remember that muzzle flash is the particle system. It doesn't exist yet. We're going to use it. All right. So muzzle flash dot play. All right. And then also I'm going to say anim dot set trigger. All right, because I'm shooting, right? So set trigger fire. And that is how we're going to get the gun to shake from firing it. All right. Now, we're going to do a little bit of physics. It is important to note that I really should be doing this physics inside fixed update. However, I'm in a bit of a time crunch, and this works well, so I'm just going to do it here. But what you really should do is you should have just a Boolean flags. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to do this right. So, yeah, I'm not going to show you the wrong way to do it. So, shooting equals false. All right, and so I'm going to say, if I press the button, then shooting equals true. That just means that we are, in fact, trying to shoot the gun. Yeah, that's really the better way. And so now inside here, void fixed update. I love going off script. All right, so inside fixed update is where we're actually going to do the physics, and I'm going to say if shooting is true. So if shooting, and this is where we're going to manage all our shooting code. The first thing I'll do is say shooting is false. All right, and now for my physics stuff. All right, and so what I'm going to say is, first off, I need to figure out if I hit anything, what I hit. So I will need a raycast hit, all right, just like that. And now I'll need to actually do the raycast. So to do the raycast, what we're going to do, we're not going to shoot from the gun. We're going to shoot from the center of the screen. So a lot of reasons for that, but basically it's going to mean that we always hit what we're aiming at instead of having a line cross over the center of our screen, which wouldn't really work all that well. Remember, the gun itself and the flash and all that stuff, they're just visual effects. The actual shooting comes right from the center of the character. And so I've got raycast hit, all right? And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say if physics.raycast. Okay, so we're going to shoot out a ray, all right? And the ray, where's the ray going to start? Well, the ray is going to start at transform.position. It's going to start at the center of our character, or the center of our camera, I should say. It's going to start at transform.position. Where's it going to go? Well, it's going to go transform, lowercase t, transform, I don't know why it keeps wanting to give me an uppercase t, dot forward, meaning, hey, it's going to go forward down the positive z-axis, all right? And if it hits, store that information in our hit variable, which is our raycast hit. We'll use out there. And then finally, how far are we going to shoot? 50F is really far, but I'm cool with that anyway. And this is an if statement now. So it's going to return true if we hit something and false if we do not. And so what we're going to say is if we hit something, all right, we are going to say, basically we just need to put an impact there. So I'm going to say impacts, right, sub current impact, all right, so whichever impact we're currently using, dot transform, dot position. All right, so where are we moving this impact? And I'll say equals hit dot point. So put an impact where the bullet hit. All right, and now we need to play the impact. And so I'm going to say again, impacts sub current impact dot get component. All right, and what it is a particle system. So particle system. All right. Dot play. So move it to its spot and then play its particle effect. All right. Finally, we're going to move our current impact. So I will say if plus plus current impact. I don't know why I'm losing my IntelliSense there, or teletype. So if plus plus current impact is greater than or equal to our max impacts, current impact equals 0. So just reset that. So what we're doing is we're throwing out a ray. The ray hits something. We're going to say, hey, move an impact to where we hit, play its particle effect, and then reset that stuff. And that's the whole script here, right? So I know I'm going kind of fast, but I am running out of time. And so now, or I've actually kind of run out of time, but let's finish this here. Oops, did not mean to do that. So now the script is done. Let's save our scene. Go ahead and put the script, or the script is already on our gun camera. And so now I have a slot here for muzzle flash and I have a slot for impact prefab. So I'm going to go into my first person assets here. I'm going to go into prefabs. Oop, not prefabs. Particle systems. So the first thing I need is my gunshot, my muzzle flash. So I'll go into weapon FX and I have a muzzle flash right here. The way these are made originally, they have scripts and stuff on them. So I'm just going to go ahead and disable the script and I'm going to turn off play on awake. Okay. And I'll go back to my candy cane or my gun camera and just drop that muzzle flash right on the muzzle flash property. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back out and I'm going to look at impacts. And I like concrete, but there's a bunch of them in here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn off play on awake and I'm going to turn off that script because we don't want them to be destroyed. We just want them to play their effects. And I'll go back to gun camera and I'll drop my concrete on there. And I'll go ahead and hit play. And what'll happen is I'll pause the game and then I'll shoot and I get a nice stutter. I'm not getting my muzzle flash. Oh, and I know why. So I'm not getting my muzzle flash, but you can see I get a nice shot effect there. The reason I'm not getting my muzzle flash here is because just changed the where are you? There you are. I didn't instantiate a muzzle flash. I just am playing this particle system. And so the thing I forgot to do is I forgot to actually put the muzzle flash on the camera. So I will click and drag a muzzle flash prefab onto the candy cane, and that's the one I'm going to put. There we go. So that was a mistake on my part. That's the one I'm going to put, all right, in the property there. The last thing I need to do is I actually need to put the muzzle flash on the tip of the gun. So let's go into ISO view here. Ooh, snap to an axis. Go. That looks good. That looks good, and perfect. That works. That should be fine. So we'll just come out of that there. There we go. So yeah, I messed that one up. Sorry about that. And so the muzzle flash prefab actually goes on the tip of the gun, and then the gun camera, you drag the one that's in your scene on there. Which is why we didn't have the effect. There we go. So now we got a nice muzzle flash. Boom, 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 boom. I might want to move it out just a little bit, but we get the effect there. So we get a nice, sweet flash there. There we go. Cool. Let me go ahead and save my scene. We do want to test this out real quick. We're just going to test this out on an enemy real fast. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to filter my scene by model. I'm just going to grab a enemy here. Go. Throw a collider on him. So let's do physics. Capsule collider. Lift it up here a bit. Give it some height. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on its own layer for now. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to go to tag and just tag this as an enemy, right? Just to have one, just to make sure this works, right? And so I just threw this model in here. You could do a cube, you could do whatever. I just need a collider that's tagged enemy. And I'm going to come back to my script. And in here, where I handle my shooting, right, where I move my impacts and stuff like that, I'm going to say if hit.tag, all right, hit.transform.tag, there we go, equals enemy. I'm just going to do destroy hit.gameObject, hit.transform.gameObject. So this is just to make sure my raycast is actually working. I mean, we saw the flashes and we saw the impact effects, but this will mean we can actually destroy something. This code will be replaced tomorrow when we do the networking stuff. So this is just here now, and what I'm going to do is I will hit play. Now fire, my mouse will do something weird. Now go executioner style on this guy, boom, gone. All right, so we know our shooting works. Now I'm not going to go through a lot of hassle of really prettifying or adding a lot of features to how we shoot static enemies, because tomorrow we're going to have actual enemies to shoot and other players and stuff like that. So this just tells me my raycasting works. And so now my first person game is basically done. the first person stuff, right, the shooting stuff is finished. So really all we have to do is networking tomorrow, and then the next day adding our UI elements and sort of cleaning things up and having some animations and stuff like that. So all in all, I mean, it's a pretty simple process to make once you kind of understand the pieces. And so the game is done. All right, my scripts are good. The last bit I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a new folder called prefabs. And I am simply just going to find my first person character, and I'm going to click and drag it down into the prefabs folder to create a prefab with all of the stuff I have on it. All right. And I'll rename it down here because I don't want it to be first person character. I'll just call it FPS player is fine with me. FPS player. All right. And I'll just go ahead and save my project. Might as well. And there we go. Cool. So that is what we're going to do for today. I am going to open up and answer some questions here. I am going to make the scripts available. I'm going to make the video available as soon as possible so you guys can watch to catch up for tomorrow. I may temporarily make the project available. If I do that, I'm not going to list it here, but it'll be in the video description on our website temporarily. And then once I've done all the videos, I'll probably pull the projects back down again. But let me answer some questions real quick here. So one here I see is how does he kill the enemy if it does not have a death script? I basically hit the enemy and kill the enemy for it by going to by just saying hit.gameObject or hit.transform or destroy hit.transform.gameObject. Just kills it where it stands. It doesn't have to have a death script. I just kill it. Let's see, what else? Let me look through here. I haven't looked on here for a while. Nothing about these videos today, tomorrow, or Thursday has anything to do with mobile inputs. So even though these scripts have like mobile input sections and whatnot, that's just the sample assets. That's how they were done. I'm not addressing that. I just don't have enough time. It's not that difficult to do, but that's just part of the sample assets. So I'm not messing around with that. Let's see here. What is the logic of choosing max impacts of 5? I shouldn't need any more. Matter of fact, let's see if we can't. Yeah, I mean, can you tell I don't have enough, or do I have enough? I don't even know. Right? It certainly looks like it's working to me. So I used 5. 5 seemed to be okay. All right. Let me see. Just checking chat. My iPad just made a sound. All right, I don't see any. It's easier to write like to me questions, so it's easier for me to pick them out of chat as opposed to just idle chat. Let's see. When will vector graphics render be added to Unity? I have no idea. I'm not a graphics person. I don't even really know what that means. So that's not true. I know what vector graphics are, but I don't know what they would mean in context of a video game rendering it. So sorry, no answer for you there. Let's see here. Is he going to upload the scripts somewhere so we can see what they look like? Yeah. When I upload the video, the scripts will be on our website on unity3d.com/learn. Any other questions? Where's my drawing? I already posted it, but I'll post it again. Yay! Merry Christmas. Or Merry Fragmas. Other questions? Otherwise, we're going to wrap up. I did go over the time here. Yeah, there you go. How do you understand raycast for better understanding the scripts you make? So raycast is just an invisible line. It starts somewhere and it goes somewhere else a certain distance, right? So has a finite starting point and goes a direction. So with a raycast, I'm just sending out this invisible line, and if it touches something, it comes back and tells me about it. Right? And so we use the raycast hit variable to tell me what it is that we touched. So imagine you're just pointing with your finger, right? If your finger points at something, you have knowledge of what it is you pointed at. Raycast is the same way. So it just travels out, it hits something and says, hey, I hit something. Or if it doesn't hit something, then you just get a false. Nothing was hit. Let's see. Let's see. Can you shoot when you stick to wall? I don't know what that means. You don't stick to the wall. That's the point of using the two cameras. The two cameras keep it so the gun is always in front. Yes, you can shoot. Remember the The gun itself is just a visual. Actually, you know what? You'll notice here I'm not getting the gun flash when I'm right up against the wall. We can fix that pretty easily. The reason that's happening is a muzzle flash is if I put that on the gun layer. Oop. Now my gun camera will see that. And oop, don't pause. There we go. I still get it even though the wall's in the way. So there we go. 2-camera system for the win. All right. Why is that? All right. Let's see here. That's all right. Someone will get cavities. All I saw is someone mentioned getting cavities. Okay. Another camera question. Does that trick keep you from shooting through the wall? As in the character was facing up to the wall, the ground would have clipped the trick, stick with the gun, shoot the character up against. So no, so the camera is here, right? It's not where the tip of the gun is. The camera just doesn't see the camera. The first person camera only sees the wall, not the gun. The other one sees the gun, not the wall. But the ray is still starting from the character's base here, which means you won't be able to shoot through walls or anything weird like that. So you'll still get accurate shots. It just looks like it's shooting from the right side towards the center of the screen, but it's really not. The invisible line is actually what's doing the real shooting work. If you had 2 guns, you'd be Lara Croft. That's a different game. I don't know. Maybe on Thursday we'll have 2 guns. It's the same effect. I mean, we could do the exact same thing. What if you had 2 guns? No, the gun hack will still totally work. I can just have a gun on the other side, right? It does the same thing. The only work I would need to do is I'd need to have some code to modify which gun is playing which animation and which impact effect, right? Right now I fire, both guns wouldn't fire, or maybe they would, but if I wanted it to alternate left gun, right gun, left gun, right gun, I need some script to just take turns. But otherwise it works exactly the same. Let's see. Apply some force to the enemy, throw him back, then destroy him 1 second later. You could do that. Hitting an enemy, you could make him play some death animation, right? And then fall to the ground. There's a lot of things you could do there. I'm not sure what the question was, but I'm extrapolating that based on the answer. Let's see. Let's see. My video is out. Is the tutorial over? No, not. You're missing out. He's showing his beard. I am not. All right. So I've reached the end of chat. Are there any other questions? If not, I think we can wrap this one up. This is important too, and I will put this back up here. So Twitter, all right. So like I said before, follow us on Twitter, Unity3D, at the Ant Ranch, at Will Goldstone, at Matt Mirrorfish, at Mike Geig, which is me. However, please don't just straight up ask us a question on Twitter. I don't mind answering basic questions on Twitter, but the problem is if you ask it on Twitter and I answer it on Twitter, then the knowledge dies there. So instead, create a forum post with your questions, right? Then send us a tweet with a link to the forum post. That way, when we answer the question, the knowledge lives on forever for everyone else, right? Not to mention that I don't really like doing a whole lot of back and forth diagnostics over Twitter. None of the rest of the followers really want to see that. And so post a question, that's on the forum and allow me to respond that way, as opposed to just asking for an answer over Twitter, which I will do, but I don't like it as much. Much better to just create a forum post. Let's see here. So yeah, any questions about today, any comments, feel free to message us on Twitter. Otherwise, I am going to wrap up now. Thank you all for watching. It was fun. I haven't done a live stream in months, so it was cool getting back into it. And I hope you all have a fantastic day. And hopefully the video gets posted tonight. And I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you.